Welcome back. You're still watching what are you watching? Kenya's Choice. I almost said State of the Race, then I almost said Daybreak, but it's Kenya's Choice. And of course, a very important day. And I just wanted us to look at the images of those Supreme Court judges that will be responsible for the matters of the presidential election petition. You can see them led there by Chief Justice Martha Koome. Philomena Mwilu is the Deputy Chief Justice. Then you have Justices Isaac Lenaola, Joaquin Ndungu, you have Smokin Wanjala, William Ouko, and Mohamed Ibrahim. Those are the Supreme Court judges that will be there. Of course, Smokin Wanjala, Joaquin Ndungu, and Mohamed Ibrahim have been there since the inception of that court. Was it in 2012, I believe? So they've been there for that long. The others have joined along the way. And these are the men and women that will be responsible for that process of going through the election petition. But these are the timelines that they will be following in terms of once that petition has been filed, being today, 22nd of August, then there has to be a decision by the 5th of September. That is 14 days from now. If the election of William Ruto is upheld, then he will be sworn in as the 5th President of the Republic on the 13th of September, being the first Tuesday following 7 days of the decision by the Supreme Court. Then if that election is nullified, there has to be a repeat election conducted by the 4th of November, being 60 days from the date of 5th September, assuming that that is the day the Supreme Court will be rendering that decision. And we shortly be looking at some of the situations that we've witnessed at the IEBC. But first, Dan, when you look at how the four commissioners have distanced themselves from the decision of Wafula Chebukati. Yes, he is the returning officer, and the law says that he is the returning officer who has a responsibility to declare the presidential election outcome. But then again, does this offer grounds of petition to the petitioners themselves? Is it such a big issue, and how does the court look at it vis-a-vis the credibility of what Wafula Chebukati gave the country?
Yes, I believe that will play out at the Supreme Court, because it's already played out in terms of what the expected petitioners have been indicating. And ideally, as I've indicated, when issues are taken to the Supreme Court or to any court, it is a good thing because we get to nurture our democracy even as our constitution and the laws also settle. And that's why I always say that you'll find places like America, some of these cases do not go to court because they already went to court during the time immediately after their constitutions came into play and issues were settled. At this point, our constitution is still very young, and such issues, once taken to court, they are settled once and for all, and also for the future. So a question like this it's a very germane question, because as the constitution indicates that elections must be transparent, must be an easy format, must be verifiable, and must be simple, and there must be accountability. Of course, this is the role of the IEBC as an entity. So IEBC is known to be the chairman and the commissioners themselves and the secretariat together. So it is not, you cannot isolate it. If you look at the constitution, it goes ahead and says for the presidential election, the chairman has the mandate to actually announce and tell us who the results or the winner. So that is an exclusive role of the chair. So the Constitution is quite silent on the role of the commissioners in respect to the presidential election. So to that particular extent, the question then begs, does that mean that they have no role whatsoever, especially when the mandate of the entire elections is actually on the shoulders of the entire commission, including the commissioners? Remember, there was a case where the court indicated that, and it was a case involving the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, where the court indicated that the commission includes the commissioners, and without them, the commission cannot undertake any role. So to that particular extent, the role of these commissioners will come into play. But remember, there is also the issue of quorum, whereby the Constitution has already given us the quorum as 3. That is the chair and any other 2.
Right.
So ideally, the other question that will be, if you meet quorum and you make a decision, what then will be the role of the other commissioners if they are not part and parcel of that process? So it is important. These are very fundamental questions, which it will be important for the Supreme Court, being the highest court in the land, and the court exclusively vested with dealing with these issues of presidential elections, to give us the way forward, so that even IEBC itself can now know how to carry out its mandate going forward, and especially to ensure that even as we are going into the other election in 2027 and past, it's very clear now, and we do not have what we are seeing today, which will then impeach the credibility of an election from, you know, a citizen's point of view, because you expect IEBC to be talking in the same language, to be telling you and giving us confidence, and not to be talking at cross purpose. So that should be a germane issue, and I believe it will be important, and we all await to hear what the Supreme Court will tell us.
Right, and I'm looking at the Constitution, Javas, and this is Article 138, it's Article 3. Is it clause C, or how do you read that?
Yes.
After counting the votes in the polling stations, the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission shall tally and verify the count and declare the result. So it speaks about the commission. But then there's that part that I'm trying to find here that is specific to the returning officer, in this case the chairman of the IEBC.
138 is Article 10.
Yes, within 7 days after the presidential election, the chairperson of the IEBC shall declare the result of the election and deliver a written notification of the result to the Chief Justice and the incumbent. Already 4 commissioners, and I hear the other 2, though unconfirmed, may have also expressed themselves. They said that they were not part of the process, especially towards the end. Yet we saw them come out and read out results from several constituencies, up to, I think, 259. So the final ones that were never announced on the floor of the Bomas of Kenya. So how important is this a fact before a petition to be filed at the Supreme Court in this election?
Well, first, the IEBC commissioners must spare the country the kind of juvenile spats that they have entertained us to from the day of the declaration of presidential results at Bomas of Kenya and the other at Serena. We know very well that in this country, from the time of the defunct ECK and now in these times of IEBC, that the occupational hazard of being a commissioner is to face and shoulder the weight of blemishes from politicians and citizens alike. And that's expected because you are presiding over issues that take care of the political interests of the country and of the individual aspirants. Now, to the extent that the 4 commissioners, and if you like even the other 2 that rumor has it that maybe they are crossing over the bridge, if at all they will want to make claim and stand by it that they were not part of the process, and they are hanging on to argument that not part of the process in the final phase. Now, I think all of us have been there and have seen that they have been working with tremendous collegiality in their work, in the announcement of results from various constituencies. We've seen that. And then it would be curious, why is it, for example, that these 4 made such declaration, and then possibly, if at all, the other 2 want to have been fished to move to this other side? Question that...
What do you mean fished?
If at all they have moved as of now, they have not spoken.
No. When you say fished, it sounds like someone is pulling the strings or pulling the net.
Now, let me tell you one thing, Sam.
Yeah.
It is possible, it's not remote, that the IEBC commissioners possibly are finding themselves also within the musical chairs of politics. It is possible, and it's not remote from where I sit, that the IEBC as a commission, which most of the time faces so much infiltration and political interference, it is possible that there is some political persuasion that these commissioners are facing. It is not remote. I would not want to...
Would that be true then for the rest,
I'm just saying,
the rest of the commission?
Now, that's what I'm just saying. Huh? Because first of all, let's face it, Sam. These commissioners are Kenyans. These commissioners are human beings. These commissioners are emotive people. It is possible that even though they do not vote, right, it is possible that they have got certain political inclinations, yet they're supposed to be apolitical while they're discharging their mandate.
That's what I'm asking. If you suspect or you think it's possible that probably the four could have been netted politically, how then is the rest of the commissioners and the commission itself, including the secretariat, how immune is it?
Now, actually, let me put it this way, that we as a people, and especially our politicians, the political elites, are so much driven by the urge to win every seat, the motive and the interest, so much so that most of the times they interfere, they want to interfere, they even want to direct the commission in discharging its work. That's a fact, and history is there, you know, to prove this, that there's been so much interest. Now, I am not saying that there is evidence to show that these commissioners are playing politics with this election. But given how things have played out now and in the past, it is possible that there's some kind of political influence, not to the four commissioners alone, but I'm saying to the commission and its work. And this is disgraceful. Now, what is worse is that after the four made their statement, we have seen how that statement has fanned the various political pronouncements, for example, of Azimio. That's a fact and it's on record. So given these issues arising, question arises, do these four commissioners want to play a part in furtherance of the kind of push and trajectory, for example, that Azimio is taking and has taken? Or would they want just to give the facts that they say they have and stay on the side? Because it depends on how they want to be involved, for example, in the Azimio petition. To what extent are they going or have they been involved, clandestinely perhaps? Because given the statements, the two statements that they have made, is it remote and unimaginable that some politicians then have accosted them to desire to get much more information about what transpired in this last phase?
But let me ask you this. If commissioners on 15th of August, because we were with you in studio, just after 4:30, we were waiting for Chebukati to come and announce the results and declare a winner, if there was one. At the same time, we saw some four commissioners from Serena addressing a press conference. If you are Raila Odinga, or if you are a potential petitioner, what would you do with that information?
Well, on the other side, it is possible that, you know...
because you're making it appear like they address the nation based on instructions.
No. They may not have addressed the nation based on instructions. But after they dissented, right, it is possible that moving forward from that time, that some other political operatives may have approached them. It is not remote, may have. Remember too that at the second presser, after just they finished addressing the media, of course, Honorable Raila Odinga also addressed the media, etc. Now, if you look at it quite objectively and examine the statement released by the four commissioners, then I think if they would have benefited from so much advice, if at all they would have benefited, then that statement would have not been written in that manner and to that extent. They would have constrained themselves or constricted themselves to certain specifics of the dissent, right? And that's my perspective.
So Javas, Dan, if you are a Supreme Court judge, and I wish you well. How would you deal with such kind of information coming to you if it's presented to you before court? And what is the place of political persuasion or the suspicions within a commission before a presidential petition, which is in court?
Yes, I was quite uncomfortable when Javas was proceeding on that line, because I think it's quite a dangerous line. And the reason is that, you see, the framers of our constitution were very clear that we must have independent commissions. And the independence is very key. It's actually the first word, even in IEBC. And because the moment you look at IEBC, you must see independence in terms of even the commissioners who are there, the chair, the vice chair, the commissioners, and the secretariat. It must be independent so that it does not matter who is in power. It does not matter what the power, whoever is in power, deep state or so, want. But the will of the people is supposed to be reflected, because that is the only way where people can change or punish a government by not fulfilling what they've promised. Without that, a government then becomes a dictatorial government. So to a large extent, at this particular stage, the fact that the 4 commissioners have come out and they are not happy, and I've told you, in terms of the law, it is a good thing when we have such issues going to the court. Because it then means tomorrow people will not blame them that you are just sitting there and you are doing nothing. Mnakula tu pesa ya serikali kwa mshahara and you are not doing anything. Because they'll say, we have now been guided that the role in terms of the presidential election is purely for the chair. So no one will blame them. Or they'll be told, no, you have a role and you have an equal role as the chair. Despite the fact that the chair is supposed to pronounce, you have a role in terms of the tally verification and everything that is required. Then they will have an authority in terms of when they meet. So it is not, we are not supposed to criticize them when they raise these issues. Right. We are supposed to encourage, and once we start labeling them that they are receiving instructions politically without any evidence, it is a dangerous trend, because the same will then happen, because Chebukati also gave his response. Then the same will happen that Chebukati is also receiving instructions from a different quarter. It is not good, because what does that do? It then means Kenyans will not trust elections and will say that as far as we are concerned, IEBC is not independent. The results we are seeing is actually based on instructions from a different quarter. We must know that these people are there, they have their rights to be there, and any questions ought to be subjected to the right forum. But I do agree with Javas that doing it publicly is not the best way forward. It's not a very good way, because it also incites Kenyans at a certain point where, you know, we are at a delicate point. Right. So such issues ought to be taken to the Supreme Court, and I believe that, as I've said, will play out. Whether they will specifically raise those issues themselves as commissioners because they have a right to do so, or whether it will be raised through the parties, one or another, that issue will come out and it will be distilled. But we do not need to throw aspersions or cast aspersions their way. I always say that, of course, the fact that you are married does not mean that someone will not admire you outside here. You have a ring, but someone will admire you. It does not prevent that. So the fact that they are independent does not mean someone will not want to interfere. They will want. But it depends with your fidelity to the oath you took and the vows you made. It is about you. It's not about the temptations that come from outside.
Are you saying Javas is safe? He's not wearing a ring today. Just hold on. I'm looking at the... I still want to follow up with Dan here. I'm looking at the petition of 2017, the one between Raila Odinga and the commission. And the respondents were IEBC itself as a commission, chairperson of IEBC, obviously Wafula Chebukati, and Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, at that time the president-elect. So probably this time around you still expect the respondents to be IEBC, the commission chair, and William Ruto as president-elect. But now, I mean, for the first time we'll have a commission going into a petition, can I say disunited?
Extremely disunited, and I think that's why the framers of this petition, I want to believe, I've not had sight of it, I've not spoken to any of them, but I want to believe it will be based on what is playing out. It will be important to, because IEBC will give instructions to his lawyers as IEBC. The chair will give instructions to lawyers as the chair of IEBC. But at this particular point, even those instructions at this point can be questioned because...
Wait a minute. So IEBC will give instructions as IEBC?
Yes.
As an institution.
But the commission has to sit down and sanction those instructions. How will they do that?
And that's why I'm saying there'll be even an issue on those instructions because they have to sit. And now we are seeing that they're not even in talking terms. So nonetheless, if they sit, the majority will actually carry the day. And of course, if there are lamentations that, and because already we are hearing that lawyers have been chosen, you may find, because there's room for interested parties, you can actually join a case as an interested party, or the petitioner can include you as an interested party. I suspect highly that these 4 commissioners will be interested parties.
Individually or corporately?
Individually. You can actually be there. As long as you are named, you are already a party. And nothing stops them from being named individually. And as long as you have sufficient reason why they are an interested party. Of course, they're a proper interested party based on the averments they've made, and because they actually are in direct correlation with the issues that the court will be dealing with. So that is still a possibility, and that's why we are waiting with bated breath to see the petition, how it has been framed, the grounds, and the parties therein, and it will determine how this matter will play out going.
But ordinarily, who determines the position of the IEBC? Is it the Secretariat or the commissioners themselves? And with chairman almost now left on his own, how does he even give instructions to his lawyers?
The commission, in terms of how it carries its mandate, is actually the commissioners themselves, not the Secretariat. The Secretariat is just an engine. The driver will determine which direction the car will go and when to ignite. So the Secretariat is just an engine. But the commission, but we have a dysfunctional commission at this point, which is a very dangerous point, because unless issues are discussed now, I'm telling you, even the elections that we are supposed to have cannot then be conducted without again having issues, the same issues going to court. So it is important that we determine at this point so that the commission can now function.
Okay.
Between now and then, I can tell you the commission cannot function, and if it is going to function, we'll still have similar issues.
I'm looking at page 4 of the Standard. They're saying some of the lawyers are PLO Lumumba, Kamau Karori. No, this was...
Those are the previous lawyers in 2017.
But on the front page of the Standard, you see them saying that Githu Muigai, Professor Githu Muigai is likely to be an IEBC lawyer. Javas, what's your take on this, and how difficult a task IEBC will have in defending the outcome, or is it explaining?
Well, first of all, courtesy of Article 188, sub-Article 4 of the Constitution, as well as the IEBC Act, you look through section even 4, the functions of the commission are well outlined. And the IEBC went into this election properly apprised of its functions. And in fact, there was no inkling whatsoever that possibly by the end of the election, that the IEBC commissioners will be speaking at cross purposes. Now, it is in light of this that I'm sure it will be very instructive and helpful for the Supreme Court to help create a bridge or that interlink and finally settle this issue between Article 138, sub-Article 10 of the Constitution and the IEBC Act. Because the IEBC Act provides that in discharging their mandate and making a decision, that the IEBC commissioners or the commission will arrive at a decision in concurrence on by majority or by majority of the commissioners.
Right.
So what I'm sure that the Supreme Court may want to entertain itself with is whether, and we've deliberated on this, whether actually the declaration of results by IEBC amounts to a decision of the commission. So the commission, the Supreme Court may want to deal with this issue with finality. because we know very well that the Constitution is the grand norm, and it is superior. So because it is the supreme law of the land, then its provisions cannot be challenged on any grounds. And in fact, we know very well that any statute that is at variance with the provision of a constitution, then, of course, we know that it's at issue. So question is, the Supreme Court finally ventilating on this issue of the work of the commissioners and the commission, especially with regard to declaration of the presidential results. Once this petition is dispensed with by the Supreme Court, I am sure that this matter will never rise again, because the Supreme Court will give proper guidance, I trust so, on this. Now, with regard to the battery of lawyers that have been assembled here, of course, we are looking forward to, to a very bruising, a ferocious and quite entertaining battle.
I will not be surprised to hear those words in court.
Yeah, and of course, in the end, let us be alive to the fact that if at all the Supreme Court will overturn the presidential results, the IBC will stand seriously indicted. And remember that if the results are overturned, the law provides, the Constitution provides that a fresh election is to be conducted within the next 60 days. Now remember that in 2017, one of the reasons why Raila Odinga refused, and together with NASA, to go into that fresh presidential election was that he cannot agree to go to that fresh election with the IBC constituted as such. Now, if at all the declaration of the court will be that the results were not accurate and did not portray the will of the voters, will we go to a fresh election within that 60-day period with the commission as it is constituted, with the commissioners speaking at cross purposes? Now, all these things, beyond just a question of the reforms that will be desirable of that commission, we may want to invite ourselves to very critical thinking about certain issues. One, that are we willing and ready to allow the commission to always to be independent as contemplated by the Constitution? Is it possible then that we give the requisite support to the commission without trying to interfere with its work? Because we know very well that an open, free, fair, and accountable election is the sine qua non of a democracy. The openness, the freeness of the elections in this country, as we've said, is a constitutional issue. And that's why when you look at the provisions of Article 186, provides mechanisms of how even the voting should be done, methodology, being simple, the methods being accurate, to the extent that any person participating in the election should feel that it's been easy for them to make a choice of the leader that they desire. And that's why, looking at all these things and how we want to strengthen our democracy, and even it's in fact very interesting that when all this was going on, countries across and friends across the continent and even across the world, they were looking with great admiration at how Kenyans were running this election. Some even were wondering that Kenyans, a country in Africa, can have the forms 34A and B on a portal of an electoral body. I mean, it's not happened in any country in Africa. And really, we won the admiration of the world.
Have we lost it?
But, well, to a great extent, given the dispute that now has arose because of the presidential results, it has left not a very good taste in the mouth. And if at all then that the Supreme Court will uphold the election of Deputy President William Ruto as president-elect and affirms it as such, then that admiration would hold. But if not, then somebody would say that we came so far, did so well, But now, like they say where I come from, that the pot always breaks by the doorstep. And that will be now the situation that we find ourselves in.
Okay.
But then another perspective would be, if at all the election of Dr. William Ruto is upheld, then one would want to wonder that would Raila Odinga then have had the interest, yes, of course, of having the election verified, or would it be a comparable case of biblical Samson who wanted to go down with the Philistines?
Yet it is within his right to really petition the Supreme Court. I want us to listen to some voices here of what transpired on the 9th and the 10th of August, that is the election day and the day after, regarding the voter turnout and the confusion that you've witnessed in a week that appeared to be a battle of solving problems, mathematical problems.
I repeat, as at noon today, 6,567,869 Kenyans had turned up to vote. This equates to 30.65% of the total 22,120,458 registered voters.
Right, that is, excuse me, Juliana Cherera speaking about it's behind you, Javas. Look, so she spoke about 6,567,869. If you calculate, obviously, you will not get the 30.65% that she was talking about. You get 29.69%. So that was a missed calculation. Let's listen to another clip of another commissioner within the IEBC giving an update of the voter turnout as of 4 p.m.
At allowed 4 p.m., 12,065,803 registered voters out of 22,120,458 had cast their votes. This equates to 56.17% of voter turnout, excluding voting through the manual register.
All right, so we look at the figures again, because 12,065,803, if you calculate that out of 22,120,458, it comes to 54.54, but they gave us a percentage of 56.17. So that was still during the election day. Let's listen to what they said the day after the election, this time round by Chairman Wafula Chebukati.
But from the kits that transmitted, the voter turnout is 65.4%. This figure will go higher once we compute the verification of the turnout in areas that did manual voting.
Just for clarity, I was given the figure of 64.6% voter turnout represents 14,164,561 voters. 64.6% represents 14,164,561 voters. And of course, this figure will go up once we get the data of those who voted manually.
All right, so let's look at it again so that we get a better feel of the calculations, because the chairman is talking about the first. So you notice there's a difference of the figures in 17 minutes, same press conference. So first spoke of 65.4%. If you're to calculate that against 22 million and the other figures, you'll get 14,466,000. But then he corrects it to 64.6% and then says the absolute number of the voters is 14,164,561. But if you calculate that against the voters register, it comes to 64.03. Again, a miscalculation from the commission. And obviously this was way before the manually identified voters had been tallied and put into the voter turnout. And Duncan, does this mean anything? Because the commission is updating the country periodically as of the progress made so far. Then eventually the day after election, they have already looked at the returns from the KIMS case and they have realized how much the voter turnout is. Yet there's those mistakes. What does this mean and what does it do to the credibility of the process?
Yeah, you know, the moment we look at IEBC and the very, very important and central role that it has in terms of the elections, the general elections and even by-elections, they should be like Caesar's wife. They should not be like myself, who is not very good in mathematics, because it's all about numbers, you know. So when they get numbers wrong, especially from the point where the voting has already started, it already tells you there is a major problem, because their figures are supposed to be unimpeachable. The moment you have, and you know, that can be, like you look at the president-elect's numbers, you know, he went past the mark by just a percentage point something. So that tells you that these decimal points are so important in terms of the constitutional threshold that is there, so that there should be no room in terms of miscalculation, because that alone can then mean you've gotten it all wrong. And there's a reason why the framers of the Constitution were very clear that you must get 50 plus 1%. They were very clear, and it's very, very important. So these are some of the issues that have to be looked into. And of course, I want to believe they were relying on information, most likely from the experts, their the secretariat. So there's incompetency at that stage, but it is so bad. Like Javas says, you know, we are being admired in terms of how we are conducting our elections. But when such start coming out, people will laugh at either we don't have calculators, we can put these things on the portal, but we don't know how to even use the calculators, you know. So it can mess us up in a very big way. Ideally, you look at it, and I want to say that if these elections are impeached or nullified, it will send a very bad message. Because it is, I'm telling you, for an election to be nullified, it is not the norm. So for it to be nullified consecutively, for the second time, it is a very, very bad message. Because there must be lessons we've learned, and there must be some acceptance in terms of how we do. Because we'll now be used as examples outside there in terms of how not to do elections. And people will be brought here to when they are doing their masters, to do their thesis on how, you know, elections can be manipulated. It will be so bad. And that's why I think it is not a very good thing. As much as it is good, we'll get our lessons. Yeah. It is not proper for us to demonstrate that we don't learn and we cannot do our elections or conduct them properly. Or then that's where people will say, do we need people from outside to conduct our elections? Are we demonstrating that we are unable to do our elections ourselves? That I can't trust our own Sam Gituku here, I'd rather trust someone from outside. It is not proper. So it will send a very bad message. That's why I'm saying whatever will transpire, especially after Friday, because the respondents will have 4 days after today to file their responses. We are going into a weekend, as much as Java says, yes, there'll be, you know, it will be fireworks. Fireworks in a way that whoever is watching it, all what we will be getting from there is how our elections were not done properly. And others will be defending how our elections were done properly. The bigger picture of it is that so long as someone is trying to come with something believable or maybe somehow, even if it's not 100% believable, you are impeaching your own elections and your own institution, which was supposed to have conducted proper elections. There is no election that will be 100% proper. That's why I'm saying there are issues in any election which must be contemplated. And the law will accommodate that. Around 90% should be okay. But the moment you have major issues playing out, and the world will be looking at that, then the credibility that we've gotten up to that point, before even the commission has started being divisive, that credibility will be eroded 100%. And that's why the nature of the petition that comes matters a lot, the grounds.
Okay.
But more importantly, at the tail end of it, there is a loss to Kenyans, looking at it from a global perspective.
Javas, there's something else that is behind you. I'm sure you've had opportunity to go through the mathematics 101 according to Vice Chair Juliana Cherera. Of course, I don't know what that was because the statement was okay. Then go to the point of misrepresenting percentages. And obviously we know for sure that the 0.01% should be 1,421 votes. That is based on their valid votes. But should it be such a big issue, or we're reading too much into clerical errors?
Well, it is a very critical issue. Sorry, very important. And that's why the Supreme Court will want to know the kind of calculator the Supreme Court will use, because it must vary from the kind of calculator Chebukati used and the kind of calculator that Juliana Cherera used. Because it seems that either the calculators that are being used by the Commission are very old and dysfunctional, that are giving room to these mathematical errors. Because, for example, these variants in terms of what Vice Chair Cherera said or read out as the figures that she thinks are at issue and the correct figures, it also means that they did not take time to verify these figures. Of course, I know that the individual commissioners or the commissioners are not the ones that were doing the real tallying of these votes. It is the technical team. And they were being fed by this information or being given this information for them to come and pronounce. And so, of course, these numerical issues or discrepancies are issues that are going to be central to this Supreme Court petition. And that's why, like Dan says, this petition is very important. One, jurisprudentially for our country, and even in our body of law. Second, to Raila Odinga, who has said that he is seeking justice. Three, for our democracy, that will be ameliorated by way of the outcome of the Supreme Court decision. Four, by seeing how the institution that manages our election, the IEBC, can be strengthened for better results at the next election management. But beyond that, at issue here as well is this, that how come and will it be possible that an IEBC or an institution that manages our election can get it wrong in a presidential election, a general election, which it prepared for, was properly financed to do, and beyond that, when they did their dry runs, they said that at least they have got serious confidence in their readiness and the preparation, as well as the stakeholders. And that's why the qualitative issues have not been so much at issue in this outcome. But beyond that, of course, we all know the additional issue is how this election and the determination of the court will render the political players of Raila Odinga. Will he suffer the fate and the circumstance of his father, who, despite being a very great cultivator of Kenya's struggle for independence and for Raila Odinga, for our multi-party democracy, that never really ascended to that high office that each of them desired. Now, after 25 years of great effort, sacrifice, hard work, Raila Odinga was making his fifth, and possibly final stab at the presidency. Then, if at all the Supreme Court upholds the election of William Ruto, would that not then render Raila Odinga as a career presidential contender who now will not have possibly another chance to run in 2027? Or now will it give him another opportunity to contest the presidency the sixth time, if at all a fresh election is ordered, and then he runs with the hope again of winning, still a career presidential contender in the circumstances?
Sam, I think,
very interesting. I'm just, yes, Duncan, because you're coming to the tail end of the show, and I'm looking at, this is the Elections Act of 2011, and there's a section here. I know the subsection, but I need to find out what section this is. Yes, Section 80, subsection 4. An election court may, by order, direct the commission to issue a certificate of election to a president, a member of parliament, or a member of a county assembly if, A, upon recount of the ballots cast, the winner is apparent, and that the winner is found not to have committed an election offense. Is it a possibility, because the Supreme Court has just about 14 days, and there's so many things that have to happen even before the proper hearing begins at the Supreme Court. Is it even possible for Supreme Court to look at the election and determine that, no, you are not the rightful winner, this should be the person, and order IEBC to award a certificate? Or it's just about two options, either to uphold the election of William Ruto or to nullify and throw the country back to a repeat election?
Yes, as I answer that, just in terms of what Javas was stating, I think as a political analyst, Javas will be right to look at it in that perspective. But in the context of the petition, it is not about Raila Odinga, it's not about the president-elect, William Ruto, or any other contestant. It is about the will of the people, the constitutional threshold that is there, and how the IEBC conducted the election. Purely, it's about that. Where the hammer will fall, it doesn't matter. If the IEBC conducted the election properly and the will of the people manifests that the deputy president is actually the one who got the will of the people, so be it. It should not be, and it will not be about an individual. If it is the threshold was not met, then it's not even about giving Raila Odinga any favor. It is about the people of Kenya and the constitutional thresholds. Going to your question, it's a question that has been largely debated, is still debated. And what I tell people is that the law is what it is. So long as the law tells you A or B, that is what the courts ought to follow. So the law has given the Supreme Court and all other courts, and this was an amendment which was done actually by the Jubilee administration, which then now allowed courts subsequently to then pronounce a winner and command IEBC to issue a certificate to the person that the court feels actually won. So that is there in our law, but it is based upon a recount of the ballots. A recount of the ballots, in my view, does not mean physically recounting those ballots. Because it can, once you recount the ballots, you'll still have to tally to arrive at a winner. So it can start from the actual physical ballots themselves, but the idea is that if you add even what is in the tally, if the eventual results that you find indicate that there's another person who actually won, as opposed to the person pronounced by IEBC, then the law gives the courts the mandate to actually pronounce themselves, which is a departure from what was there before, because the courts only had the duty of nullifying and sending you back to a fresh election. Period. And it could not then delve into the aspect of pronouncing itself.
And that's the Constitution.
That is the Constitution. But now the Constitution has room for now for now Parliament to enact laws to better the essence of the Constitution. And all these laws that we have further the Constitution. So long as it has not been declared unconstitutional, it remains law and it has to be followed by those courts.
But Wakili, if the drafters of the Constitution wanted to have the Supreme Court with the possibility of declaring a person who has not been declared winner by IEBC to be, why then didn't they say it? Why does it have to be said by an act of Parliament?
And that is why, if you had an issue with that, you should have instructed me. I would have gone to court years ago and I would have declared it unconstitutional. But because no one has had a problem with it, we cannot raise it now because it is the law. So as far as the law is concerned, the courts will deal with the powers given to it under the law. And I do agree with you, Sam, because there will be criticisms that the court itself will then be usurping the role of Kenyans in terms of determining that winner. Someone will argue it that way, and I've had people arguing it that way. However, the court will be pronouncing itself based on the will of the people in terms of the numbers that are there. So it is a way that I believe was to try and ensure that once it is very clear that there is a definite winner who was not pronounced, then you don't need to send the country back to, or the constituency or the ward back to a by-election when the will of the people clearly reflects. It's something that will play out there. it is a law that personally I know that it will be critical in terms of saving the costs for Kenyans, but it must be handled in a very, very clear way, because this is the court of last resort. That's the only problem we have, and you cannot criticize that decision somewhere else. So it's something that we are yet to see, but it is the law that is there. And the Supreme Court, remember, you still develop law through courts. The Supreme Court can even say this law is there, but it is not proper, and it's a law that we need to relook into. And it may even disassociate itself from that provision, if so.
Okay, and Javas, as we come to the close of this, so for you, do you expect just scrutiny as has happened before, or do you see a situation of retallying or even recounting being ordered by the Supreme Court?
Well, the fact that Raila Odinga has got an issue with the numbers, the Supreme Court is going to look at the numbers. And that's why looking at all those numbers as well, it will be a question of checking or verifying the issue to do with the real number of persons who voted in this election through the KIMS kits and those who voted manually. It is central to the calculations. So the real number of people who voted, actually, it will be a question of also looking at the valid votes cast, the persons that cast their valid votes, how many of those votes did Raila Odinga get, did William Ruto get, did Wajakoya get, and even Maure. So they're going to be very central to this petition. So the centrality of the numerics in this petition then are going likely to necessitate the retabulation or tabulation by the court of these results. And if necessary, as well as if prayed for by the petitioners, then it will be important for recount to be done, if at all they want they are going to ask the court to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, indeed, that is what I wanted to say, that it all also depends with the prayers that will be there.
Okay.
If they pray for a recount and saying that they ought to have been declared the winners based on the numbers, the court will deal with that. But remember, they will also, they cannot impeach the entire 146,000 polling stations. They may just limit it to the polling stations that they have issues with. And if you tabulate with the Supreme Court having arrived at a different position, and in tandem with their prayers, then that will be it. But if you just pray for nullification, or if your prayer is that based on these calculations, there should be a runoff, then the court will align itself to that. But remember, they only have 14 days, very limited. In other countries in Africa, like I think it's Namibia, they had 9 months to deal with a presidential petition. So it's something that going forward we may also need to relook at as a country and see, does this 14 days give room for justice to be given by the Supreme Court, or it will be just a rushed process?
I've actually heard that from Chief Justice Emeritus, that is William Mutunga. Before he left office, he had said that that period needs to extend it to at least 30 days. Well, it has never been effected. There was such a conversation in the BBI, but I don't think it will so far.
Justice Martha Koome has spoken to that issue. Justice Lena Ola has spoken to that issue. But of course, for that to be altered, it takes amendment of the Constitution.
Sure thing. Let's now take a look at some of the feedback that we've been receiving as we come to the end of this. You're tweeting us at Citizen TV Kenya, at Sam Gituku. The hashtag to use is Daybreak. And the first one, Bob Otieno, you're saying that IEBC Kenya conducted this year's election according to former Chief Justice Maraga's ruling. It is going to be a tall order for Azimio la Umoja to overturn Kenya Kwanza win. Kinyua Mushoki, you're saying that original Form 34A, that is the final result, were verified and received at Bomas. A recount case will involve opening the ballot boxes, but agents appended their signatures on the Form 34A without coercion. A recount is not possible. Kuku Grady. Okay, Kuku Grady is tweeting us. A server is not PDF forms in a public portal. It's also back-end program handling upload and download. Someone with credentials can still log on to the server and replace those forms. You need an audit of the server and KIMS to know who did what. Okay. Kipto Ruto. The IEBC commissioners have the work to tally and verify the election results. It is not their business to discuss the final results. Chebukati is the only man mandated by the Constitution to declare the winner. All right. Anthony Khan, in my view, it seems like the other commissioner's duty, say for the IEBC chair, ended at announcing constituency results of the presidential votes. They were not involved in the processing, tallying, and determination of the winner. Isaac Muthusi was saying, let us hope the 4 commissioners won't be Raila's eyewitnesses in Supreme Court, and if they will, why? That's the question that Isaac Muthusi is saying. And of course, the conversation continues. The time is 2 p.m. today that we expect the petitioners or any petitioner to be the Supreme Court registry at the Milimani Law Courts to present their documentation. And after that, we should be seeing a lot of filings, exchanges of documents going on up until that time that the proper hearing will be scheduled, and we will be getting a determination by the 5th of September. Thank you both, Dan Okatch, as well as Javas Bigambo, for making time for us.
Thank you.
My name is Sam Gituku. See you some other time. Up next is Sporty Monday.